So that was quite insightful. I think Karan has joined us. So good to see you, Karan, here. So pleased to meet you after quite a hiatus since we last met. I hope you are doing well. Good morning to everybody, but a very late good evening to you, Karan. I know it's very late there. It's almost past 11:15 now. So thank you so much for taking your time out and meeting our students. As I mentioned, we have a lot of people who have been interested to join your session. We've got number of registrations. We also have the students who are associated with the Finishing School initiative of the state government who have joined us through the medium of Facebook Live, and a number of them here. I'm joined by Dr. Karan, who is coordinating the Finishing School initiative, uh, and an exciting video that I've seen multiple times before as well, but it's always refreshing to see it over and over again. So, uh, friends, as you know, Karan has joined us, and I'll be handing over to Karan, who will be speaking a little bit about uh, uh, research innovation. We've already seen the kind of work he's doing in black holes and gravitational waves. Uh, I'll ask Karan to go through a bunch of slides that he has prepared for us. And uske baad, we will do a bit of question answer. You all can send your questions to participants through the medium of Zoom and through the medium of Facebook as well. We won't be taking a lot of questions. We want to make sure that Karan gets his sleep tonight and gets to bed by midnight. It's very late. But at the same time, we will have a few questions from Zoom and a few questions from Facebook that we'll be taking, that our team will be putting together. So feel free to send your questions through both of these mediums. And over to you, Karan.
Well, thank you so much, Rahul. I hope everyone can hear me well. Is my sound clear? My
Yes,
video
yes.
clear? Perfect. Well, thank you, first of all, for organizing this. Um, it's been a really unusual time. So last when we met, it was hard to expect when the next time we would meet, even if it's virtually, the whole world would
Yes.
have been upside down. So yeah, it's at least good thing that we all here who have joined are safe, able to be
Yes.
connect with each other through this, thanks to internet that we have not got sane or insane rather. And thank you everyone, the good tech team, Rahul, Dr. Kanan, everyone for having me. So what I was thinking is, so this what has happened in the last 3 months has very fundamentally changed, a lot of things. We used to take many things for granted. I have this world map behind me, and my wife and I got it as our wedding anniversary gift. And we were thinking of all the places where we've never been and we should be one day going. And now we look at it, we can literally not leave the part where we are for last 3-4 months, and it's unlikely that we can even come back to, let's say, visit every friends and families in India. So this is where the world is. But what has changed more so, and something that I am more closely connected, is what has happened to universities. So part, I've been inside a university for almost 14 years now, and I've never been away for this long as I have been in this last 3 months. Like for last 3 months, I could not go to my campus, I could not access my lab, I could not meet my students, my collaborators. And this has not happened to me since I cleared 12th standard, literally. So this has been a learning, how do we sustain education? How do we still do research in a time like this? And so I have a few thoughts which I felt, I'll just share it through slides, and let's see if it works smoothly. Okay, I hope everyone can see the slides.
Yes, Karan.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna then make it into a slideshow. So in case you have follow-up questions you wanna ask, I'm relatively active on social media for my community standards. At least you would find me that I often post about astronomy and stuff, mostly on Instagram or Twitter. So if you are there, just shoot your questions whenever. So I'll start with what has been my last 3 months. Personally, I have been a little blessed in the sense that I'm a theoretical astrophysicist. I only work mostly with pen, paper, and my computer because I try to understand what happens to many things in the universe, but most probably what happens to black holes and stars. And once I have data, I can work around with it. I'm able to use supercomputers remotely. So I have not had so much. In fact, it's sort of very ironic to say this, but last 3 months have been the most productive I have been in a long time because there is zero distractions literally. And I have substantially decreased even my communicating on social media and stuff because there are just so many ideas that come to you and you want to write a paper about it. And many of you here who are in research, who are PhD students, professors, know that once an idea kicks in and you want to write that manuscript, that is the most satisfying thing one has as a scientist to do. So in February, when things were just getting bad in some parts of the world, uh, I and the director of Harvard's Astrophysics Center, we published this one paper where we figured out, it was a very like, interesting intellectual exercise. We figured out how many stars are there in the universe that become black holes, and that there is a budget that not all stars in the universe can become black holes and collide. So that was published in this prestigious astrophysical journal, Letters. It received quite a news because we found a very fundamental, almost a theorem of what happens to stars and black holes. And Professor Loeb is one of the most say inspiring physicists of this generation. In March this year, my paper, which I've been thinking about it for a while, which finally got published in Nature Journal, and it was the cover of the Nature Journal, which is one of this rare prestige one gets being in the field to have a publication in Nature and have it on the cover page of it. The image that you see, this colorful, nice lines or almost like a painting that you see, it's actually exactly how the two black holes, when they come too close to each other, this is how the radiation is. Now, from the TED talk, you got some ideas that in black hole is this kind of thing where nothing releases from a black hole. That's why quote unquote black hole, because light cannot leave. But universe has a nice way of telling us, how it makes black holes, where the black holes are. And this is actually a supercomputer simulation. It is one of the most sophisticated simulation. It took one of the world's fastest supercomputer available for civilian use to create this nice, beautiful image. It almost takes, in human time, it would take a computer almost 50,000 hours to create just this snapshot out of it because Einstein's equations are that complicated. And in April, and which has been now since what has kept me busy, is that we have found black holes in the universe that completely defy our expectations. It seems that we are now going towards a point where universe has started throwing a surprise. It's completely breaking our perception of what stars are, what black holes are. So there's this one discovery we published in April, and there are some ideas and thoughts that I'm engaged. So currently, actually, I'm working on 5 different papers, projects. The point I'm trying to make is all of this is possible without I literally living this room. Like I'm here on this desk, on front of this computer, but all of this has been happening. So I've not been to school, been to my university since February now. And the reason all of this has happened is because not just in crisis, but for last 7 to 8 years, I have been using some form of Zoom or Cisco WebEx or Skype and Slack and GitHub to communicate with my collaborators. Almost every day for last couple of years, I have been in at least one Zoom call, almost every weekday when the school is active, because I work on this collaboration. The collaboration is multiple people in different countries. And it's just like this, sometimes I am in 11 p.m. time and my colleagues in India are in the morning time, and sometimes it's reversed. But these tools allow us to do almost level of research that we are able to do with university doors open. So the first thing that I've learned is remote connections is really the way forward. That's the best way we can keep research connected, students connected. I meet my students almost on a daily basis. I meet my professors and my advisors on a daily basis. So nothing has particularly changed for me. So on that note, so where are we now? And this is an interesting tale of exponentials that we are playing. If you have heard this anecdote is a story which people are now commonly using, but we don't really know where the origin of the story is. It's just a myth that we continue, and we think that this is a good lesson we learn from it. So the word exponential, and I think now people have commonly hear in newspapers, ઘણા બધા પેપરમાં graphs હોય છે કે there is an exponential growth of coronavirus cases. There are 2 cases and now there are 2,000. And where does this word exponential actually originate? So it's been debatable where it comes from, but this classic example is perhaps in 6th century, around in the Gupta period. There was a king, unknown because it's an anecdotal story, and someone in the darbar asked, and the king was impressed, what do you want in return? And he said, in the game of shatranj that we play, just put 1 rice in every box, and in the every next box put twice the rice you had in the last box. There is a story that maybe Birbal had asked this to Akbar also, versions of the stories. But what ends up happening, just in a chessboard where you have only 64 blocks, and you put 1 rice, and then you put the next 2 rice, and then you put 4 rice, and then 8, and then 16. If you keep doing this, you would have 2 to the power 64 rice that just comes out of a chessboard. That is 10 to the power almost 19. That is more than all the rice combined in this universe, almost, at least on planet Earth. And that is where, this key is, what we are able to see right now. And there's a very nice quote from astronomer Carl Sagan, who famously say that if you understand exponentials, the key to many of the secrets of the universe is in your hand. And that brings me to the exponential that we see every day in news now. This slide 4 that I'm on. On the left is this distressing plot that you see is number of positive coronavirus cases in the world in last 3 months or 4 months. I distinctly remember in the first week of March, I had to, there were only countable cases. And for most, even within United States, it was like, oh, it's just, one of the things like common flu has happened, it's something like it would just pass on. And I just jota, you can see the akhu, like every day, number of cases, it's just like the rice, pella beata, then you had 4, then you had 8. And then suddenly you start being in thousands, and you started being in millions. And now we have finally reached a linear point, so the cases are not going exponential. But this is how it connects. And to think that it's not going to happen to you or anyone close to you, it's really a myth. I am right now in a city where relatively it's less, but there are still 1 out of every 150 person has a coronavirus positive case. And very close to me, one of my research colleagues suffered a stroke last weekend, because of COVID. So to think that it won't happen is just, do not oversmart yourself. It can happen to anyone right now. This plot at the left is this exponential, very stressful to see because it's always increasing. The one on the right is also a bit stressful to see for various reasons. This is the amount of data in the world that has increased in the last 2 decades or a decade or so, and the projections that how much is going to increase over the time. I don't know, call per show, what's your general age group, but if you are as old as at least I am, I've seen floppy disks, and floppy disks used to hold, 1 MB in memory, and that was a revolution, right? You could store that thing on floppy disk, and from there we went to hundreds of MB on a CD, and from there now we have a single human on a daily basis generates more data than what all the 90s era combined is. And that is the amount of data that is being generated. And what has happened because of this data is innovation. Actually, the very fact that the data is increased this way is innovation. The innovation in what your memory spaces is, the innovation in how you generate data. Like I wear a watch which generates now more data than what a cell phone used to generate a few years ago, just because it's constantly monitoring my heartbeat and a much more body data than even my personal doctor has ever learned about me. Right? That much a watch has learned just about it. So there is a book chapter I wrote a few years ago. Whoever is interested in this link, it's on what big data science actually does, mostly for intelligence community, but for a lot of other things in the world. So going from this, then, what have been there has been this odd trend that whenever there is a crisis, somehow some sort of innovation has followed over the time in the same era. At least the innovation has grown around the time of crisis. So in 1665, there was a plague in England. Just like now, Cambridge University was completely shut down for months. And at that time, Newton was not famous, of course, at that time. He was forced to go home. And in the time that he was at home, he came up with this famous Newton's theory of gravity. So during a plague, a pandemic, he came up with the most important mathematical tool that has redefined humanity since. And I'm talking about almost everything you do in your day-to-day life is an application of Newton's gravity in direct or indirect ways. Then during World War One, during World War One and post World War One, the whole revolution of quantum physics happened. And at the same time, Einstein came up with his theory of relativity, Bohr and Heisenberg and others came up with the quantum principles. And now, after 100 years, we are able to communicate this way is because of World War One time this crisis happened. World War II similarly made nuclear reactors possible, and it was thought impossible that an equation like E equals to mc square can be converted into the biggest geopolitical connection that makes the world sort of, in some ways connected and divided together. Cold War led humans on moon happen. In case of India, Pokhran was just preceding the Kargil tension that happened. The 2008 economic crisis, and some of us have lived through that crisis. We know how bad situation was even then. The 3G and AI revolution, and particularly machine learning revolution, followed the 2008 economic crisis, where we wanted to have compressed more data in a smarter way, better algorithms. And the question is, what is COVID, post-COVID? And it's highly speculative. We could have many versions of looking at what this innovation lies. But I want to show these two things which I've been very happy as a scientist actually to see. There are these two companies in the United States. The one on the right is more famous, is Tesla by the inventor Elon Musk. And the one on the left is Moderna. Moderna is a biotech company. And it works on this gene therapy technology, which is one of the key to how you solve a COVID kind of a vaccine. This is the red dot is what their stocks were the day it became clear that WHO has made pandemic declared. It was like the mid-March when the whole US economy had its shot down at almost, like it wiped out 10 years of gain. Post that, there are two technologies completely ambitious, and any sane mind would not say that I'm going to invest in something which may not work anymore. At least who would care about right now electric cars? Who cares about whether private companies can send space jets, rockets? The stock of both of them increased of close to 300% just in these days. So what has been nice to know, and at least I think from a millennial standpoint, is that millennials, who if they are the investors, they believe in risky, ambitious, long-term R&D, beating the status quo. So sure, one could have invested right now in traditional banks because banks are going to loan more people, or you may remove from banks and do something more traditional, like you invest in Zoom or Skype or something. But these are really out there technologies which are not going to see light in the next year. Their profit margin are not going to increase in a single year or 2 years. It took a long R&D to even come up with these things, but still things are going. And this is a nice paradox I'm happy to see. So few post-COVID thoughts, that I think, now that people would be more invested, and it has to happen through an environmental thing. It's not that one person or one company starts, but everything has to connect. So the thing to see is now 5G is coming. 5G technologies is going to change internet in a much more substantial way than the difference was from 3G to 4G, because there are a lot of things such as augmented reality. અત્યારના તમે મને ઝૂમ પર આટલી સારી રીતે જોઈ શકો છો, is because internet આપણો બધાનું સારું છે. Talk 5 years ago when you had only 3G phone, this would be lagging so bad you could not even watch a YouTube video. And what would happen with 5G is I could have been there on your virtual reality set. You could have seen me in a hologram right now. And that technology exists, virtual reality, Google Glass. Google Glass, incidentally, was when I joined Georgia Tech as a PhD student. Google Glass was developed at Georgia Tech by the Georgia Tech professors. And you would see members of the lab wearing Google Glasses and walking around campus. Great technology, did not see the light of the day only because at that time the internet was not as powerful to have augmented reality support such a tool. Now I think we are at a stage where it will. A thing to note is gaming is very changing dramatically. And that's why when you look at why gaming changes, is because GPU technology, CPUs is what your computers are made up of. GPUs is a slightly faster way of deciding how the computer divides its tasks. The GPU revolution has really been critical. So has that has helped cloud. That has made gaming much more smoother. The kind of games now you can play on your cell phone multiplayer is much more interesting than saying that you are gonna stream a Netflix special, right? Because it's much more interactive. You have control over. And of course, there is autonomous cars. The autonomous cars, if you have set in a Tesla, you already know the amount of internet data has to go out from the car so that the car can decide how it's going to go in the road by itself, to the point it also knows how to change lanes when there are other cars, completely without a human interaction. And that is also possible because 5G level of internet is showing up. This is essentially where innovative startups can break the status quo. They can do things which traditional companies may be not willing to do. The second, a big overhaul is in the healthcare and pharma sector. And this is, I almost think it's very similar to the internet revolution in the sense that now more people are concerned about their health. They are more concerned about what they eat, what their lifestyle is. And that kind of apps are gonna be really in the market now, post-COVID era. This is also where universities can make a big impact, because unlike technology which are IT driven, where you could have a smart idea that can be made into a business model, in healthcare and pharma, you really need to know enough basics. Only then you could go and talk about innovation. That means you have to have at least a college degree. You have to have studied pharmacy. You have to have studied biotech. You have to have been at least a master's or a PhD student to be able to really know what the technologies are. And this is where at least I see the universities here in US have more heavily invested. So for example, Moderna, the company I showed you whose stock increased, has a heavy funding from professors at Harvard, have a lot of investment in universities across the country. The last is space and fundamental research. Now, this is very uncertain because to expect India atyarna in this crisis to spend another 1,500 crore to go on space is a matter of debate. What you fund, because there's a lot of priorities. But if you have a national priority, it can overshot. So for example, it did not happen yesterday, but it's going to happen on Saturday, that NASA is going to launch its first commercial human flight with a private company, SpaceX. And if you remember, NASA has not launched a human from Earth almost since Kalpana Chawla passed away in that Challenger accident. So for that kind of historic shift to happen is only because industry have the confidence that the government has set as a top priority. So in the Trump administration, the top priority was we have to go to Mars. Before we go to Mars, we have to reach Moon. We have to make a base there. And to reach Moon, only alone NASA cannot do. So they divided into multiple things. So they have one thing called Space Force, where US military has now a special wing dedicated to just going to space. That increases your funding. Then you have private companies, there is SpaceX, there is Amazon's Blue Origins, who have funded a lot of R&D. And combined in that sense, now, yes, they can go. There is also beyond space is really the quantum computing revolution that is awaiting. And the amount of research that goes into it is very ambitious. And this can happen really only if you have national priority on it. So the last slides is what I think of education in this post-COVID times. And I've always been very critical. Rahul knows in multiple conversations that how I feel, especially about education in the education that I grew up in, which is in India. So I should only comment on that. The university education really needs a refinement. Complete overhaul was always needed. If you see any online lecture, so I see a lot of trend that every university is asking, oh, create your own new lectures from professors. It's very hard to match the lectures that MIT and Stanford have made public for last 5-6 years. You can go on any course. You can learn general theory of relativity from the leaders of string theory. If you just sit through the lecture. So the amount of courses that are available are so much and so good that it's a bit. You cannot expect new universities to come up with lectures by new professors rather. And the universities have to think that what do then students are gaining, other than a degree. You're spending 3 to 4 years in a minimum in a university. If you are just gonna teach them, if you are just gonna keep it like a tuition class, except the fact that તમે એમને સવારે બસમાં લઈને તમારા campus પર લઈ જાઓ છો અને ત્યાં સાંજ સુધી રાખો છો. If that is your concept of university education, then you are really running only a tuition class. It's not really what a university is. It doesn't matter whether you have a university tag after you or not. So what I have felt personally, and that has been very enriching here in the universities that I've been, is that research training is a key. So students can adapt to emerging technologies. So my personal example is I've been doing research in gravitational waves since I was a first year college student in physics. I was just there, not knowing enough physics. But the good thing was every student was expected to do research. So you interact with professors more, you read more than what your books do. And in that way, you are ready for emerging technologies. So by the time I was in my undergraduate, I learned how to write a code on supercomputer because that was a thing which was part of my research to learn. I see my student right now, my 2 students, one of them is joining Caltech for PhD. He's an undergraduate student, 21 age, but still is able to do research that it took me almost end of my PhD to learn. And the fact he's able to do so good is because he started as a first year student. So I think that is really where the key of university education is, especially because you have to make it more interactive. Now, K-12 education, which I'm also very connected with within Gujarat, at least in my home city, Baroda. See, it's very odd that right now everyone is like, oh, we are going to take Zoom classes or we are going to have smart classes and teach. No, this is not you do now. You have to do every often. Every often a student should have an option to learn from resources online. The fact that parents should be able to connect with their teachers through emails, through some sort of WhatsApp group. These tools have to be much more common and not just in crisis that you now are trying to say, yeah, Zoom par le le. No. You have to keep your internet tool. Something as basic as students need email. teachers needs email on which those emails can be sent and received. Basic things like this, every school in the state has to have. This is not is, like only principal no email check. This is a generic email that you send, um, uh, state government na forms and stuff like. And the thing for college students, this is my final parting thoughts. PhDs, you have to be ambitious. Time now for incremental PhDs is going away. There are many PhDs coming up, and to make it really a haul, you cannot say you added this one line extension of what was already known. Try to do something very original, be bold, and most importantly, you have to work a bit smart and not focus too much on just learning. The typical problem I see, a lot of PhD students, and nothing to their fault, they feel, okay, oh, now we field my GHA, we have to learn. So they read the books, they read the papers, but that reading can take your first 2, 3 years of PhD. So you want to keep that balance. Okay, every 1 year you have to have a paper out. So learn enough that helps you write and finish a project, and then learn something more. You cannot, I still don't know so many things in physics. I don't know how to do quantum field theory, for example, but I can still be a PhD in physics. I can still publish my own papers in this field, just because I don't aim to learn all the physics. You only learn things which helps you in research. And the college student, and the team here in Gutsec and Gujarat University have been much more, advanced in the sense that I could see that they are value networking. They value their online presence. They have LinkedIn. I've seen people being active, but by and large, students are not. And this is very rare thing to expect. Someone graduating, let's say from Georgia Tech, to not have their own personal website. For example, very basic thing, where you have your resume uploaded, to have an active LinkedIn profile, to use your connection. So when you see that, oh, he's an alumni also of Gujarat University, and in Gujarat University alumni list goes from Samsung to the Prime Minister office. It's a big list of alumni you have. The same is with MS University, huge list. You have to be able to make sure that you find those connections. You have to network, and it's really the key. You have to have an online presence. And so, yeah, be safe. You all are smart who are attending this lecture, smarter in the sense that you can dissect information and teach to others in your family who may not have that privilege of understanding what is fake news on WhatsApp and everywhere else. So try to educate everyone. Just want to leave with this image that I love. This is an image of Earth from Saturn. This is a real image. It was taken by the Cassini spacecraft, which was a mission to Saturn. You see Earth there. This is where we have lived for a few 100,000 years. We have went through many pandemics. We have went through many, crazy things on this planet. But that is where our planet is, and it gives you some sort of a perspective in this time. Why it is important for us to carry on what we do. Thank you, and now let's take questions.
Thank you so much, Karan. Spellbinding as usual. So thank you for your insights. We're getting a lot of questions. I think we'll have to do another session with you sometime soon. We're getting a ton of questions on Zoom and on Facebook. I'll start with something around the crux of what we are trying to discuss and kind of trying to translate to our students and our researchers. A very interesting question coming from an anonymous attendee is, how do you actually look at academic research and convert it into commercial research? And if you can share a few thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. I have known many of my very good friends who have been in PhD programs, and they decided to leave PhD halfway and join industry, let's say Facebook, Google, because those industries are just like being in university. You have an environment where research is very much part of what they do, and especially if you are at that level in the team. So I think the line is blurring now. What is academic research? What is industrial research? But it's it is up to the if you're starting your own thing and taking it out, uh, that always needs an idea which can scale. So a lot of academic research unfortunately have the problem that they are very focused on a very particular problem, and so when you take it out to industries, they don't scale well. And so unless and until you are able to see your academic research is something that can, let's say if you are able to have a better COVID testing, for example, and that is a very academic research, because you can't come up with that idea by your own. You have to know enough biology, microbiology to be able to do that. Then yes, that's an idea to go.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Dr. Kanan, you have a question?
I have a lot of questions. Hi, Karan.
Yes, I'm sure.
It's a privilege to be here on the panel with you. And I, at the outset, want to wish you a very happy birthday, belated by 11 days.
Thank you.
And I happen to be from Baroda and from the MS University. It's a privilege to be on the panel right now. I'm intrigued by the Tanpura behind on your screen.
It's my sitar.
Your sitar. Okay, wonderful. So on behalf of the finishing school students, I'd like to thank you also and Rahul for calling us over. We have a lot of students, about more than 400 students watching you. And they have a whole lot of questions. Let me go straight to it. One of these questions is saying from where was the force generated that led to the formation of the black hole in the first place?
Yeah. So actually there's a nice history to it which connects to Gujarat. As funny as it is, there was a Gujarati mathematician called Vaidya, Prahlad Chunilal Vaidya, who was the vice chancellor of the Gujarat University. I gave the Vaidya lecture, centennial lecture, both at Gujarat University and MS University actually. And he came up with this idea that what is the gravity of a shining star? Because until then we had thought that light does not get affected by gravity. And he came up with a formalism that actually light also, gets impacted by gravity. So we could all be here and invisible lights are coming and making a black hole around us. So what happens with black hole essentially is a star is like an engine. You can think of the engine has some gas in it, and the gas, nuclear radiation that keeps the star pushed out, which is why we see light from sun. At the same time, gravity is trying to pull it down. That's why star maintains this nice symmetry of a ball, a sphere. And when you turn off that gas from inside, it has to collapse. It's not that a force is being created. It's actually gravity just trying to bring everything naturally to as close as it can. And in the process, a black hole forms.
Wonderful. So there's also this question, if I can take it on, Rahul. What is the present now in the black hole? Is there can we go there? And does anything that go into the black hole get converted into energy? There are lots of questions like, what about, can we create an arbitrary black hole? And what about the NASA discovering a parallel universe? So many such things. You can take on whatever works for you.
Yeah, so there's the, up until 2015, we had never known that a black hole actually exists in the universe. What we had known is we had some evidence. You can almost think of this word escape velocity, which we learn in 11th standard physics, is everything that has gravity has an escape velocity. And if you want to leave, you have to have more energy than escape velocity. That's why when you see the ISRO launch, it is so energetic, so prolific that much energy is needed, 22.2 kilometers per second to leave Earth. But what if something is so dense that even light cannot escape? The escape velocity is greater than light. So these ideas were known since Newton. And what the greatness of Einstein was to say that a black hole is a universal black hole. So once it is there, it is a black hole for all observers. And then we knew that once you enter the black hole, there is no possible way you can leave from the system. All these beautiful ideas came. Stephen Hawking wrote many interesting work on it. I was very influenced by Stephen Hawking's writings. I was actually at MS University first year BSc Physics, where I first read Hawking's Brief History of Time. And little I knew that 3 years from the time I finished that book at MS University, I will be at his institute, just seeing him around every day, doing research on black holes. But all this was always theoretical, and that was very troublesome for me when I was starting my PhD, that we have to be able to say that this is exactly a black hole. And by exactly, I mean not just by some media articles that, oh, you could not see anything, so it's a black hole. No, no, no. My brain has to be convinced that this is Einstein's black hole. And that was possible only with LIGO detector, because now we are actually seeing clearly the surface of the black hole, how it moves, how it sort of interacts. It's very beautiful. From half the volume of the universe, I can see what a few kilometer object is doing. And that is the power of modern science. So that is my general take on black hole. We had a very beautiful picture of black hole. If you could see my wallpaper, it's this image of black hole by that was published last year, around the same time last year. And that is also phenomenal that we can see black holes so nice now.
Yes.
I look after the finishing. Yeah, sorry.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I was saying that I look after the finishing school project of the government of Gujarat, where we're working towards building life skills like self-confidence in students. I think it's such a wonderful opportunity for people to see someone like you who has just been following your dream and just not getting distracted. That's the greatest takeaway for us. Thank you so much.
Of course. Karan, to build on Dr. Kanan's questions, I'm sure we have 10-15 minutes more and we are going to take up a bunch of other questions.
Take your time. That's
building on that, there's a very interesting question from Chetan and a couple of similar questions also. Let's say NASA has found this parallel universe where time is running back. So what are the probability of finding more such worlds? And then how does this work? What does it mean by time running back?
Yeah, there's a meme on Twitter that NASA has also found not to read news from Business Standard or any of those websites. Because the thing happens is, and I have been routinely misquoted, especially in press in India. So I say one thing, and to make it interesting, you add like a phrase more, because there is always a larger goal.
Right.
The fact that whether you reach that larger goal is always, you have not, so when you say things like parallel universe, I've said it in my TED talk too. I don't think that idea is going to be tested until I'm alive, because the complexities that goes, Einstein came up with the theory in 1915, and you could have believed that Einstein was right all the way 100 years, but it took our discovery in 2015 to be sure that Einstein was right. And that is a slight difference. Science is not just you theorizing it. Science is also testing that what your theory is correct. And things like parallel universes, there are so many ways to interpret it. It's very infant stage right now. If you ask me as a physicist, it makes complete sense that there is a parallel universe. But if you ask me as a physicist who has a responsibility to tell society what we know about the universe, then I would be very cautious and I would say, no, we only live in a 4-dimensional universe.
Yeah, that's thank you. Uddhav has a question, and I'm sure a lot of other students have similar questions. Uddhav says he's just completed his first year in mechanical engineering, and he understands the nobility in doing research when there are resources, and he's totally up for it. He just wants to understand what will be the first steps to taking on a research, and what is the journey of starting the research, if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah. So there are a few different ways of defining research. As we initially talked about, there is an academic research, there is industrial research. I'll say about academic research because that is a journey that I have lived. It's a long path, and it doesn't seem to get over with the degrees. In fact, beyond a point, degrees is just a transitionary stage. You are in 10th standard, so you will be also in 11th standard, you'll be in 12th standard. So for me, degrees have stopped making sense since I finished my bachelor's actually, because you're always on to that research and you want to look for opportunities that you can continue your research. When you are very young, let's say a first year college student level, you want to really know what is the feeling of doing a research. So whatever opportunity you get, no matter whether it's a field you are interested in, long term, short term, whatever, if you get an opportunity to do internship, if you get an opportunity to work with a professor, even if you get an opportunity to just do reading of book because someone suggested that, I think that is very fruitful. Take your notes, learn from it, but always back in the mind, and at least I have this habit, is to go back to the big picture, like why you do what you do. Why I am making sure that I do research even in pandemic when there are hundreds and thousands of deaths around me, and not still be able to take my brain away from that and think about black holes, which has practically no impact to humanity. Why? Because I
Right.
have that very deep urge to understand what the universe is made up of.
Right. Right. Yep. I think
Can
students need
I
to
ask
kind
you
of,
one question, please?
yes.
There's one interesting question. I thought this might interest most people. I don't know, it might even scare them. There's a question that can the Earth ever shrink and get into the black hole?
Yes. So if there was a black hole around Earth in this probability, which is I'll talk about, but let's say if it was, um, yeah, the whole Earth is gonna be destroyed. It would be a nice spectacle actually to see it. Unfortunately, it will also cost all of our lives. But we do see that outside. So in 2017, actually, it was a time when I gave this TED talk, and I distinctly remember I was in flight to come to Mumbai Yashraj Studios to record this TED talk, and I stopped at Doha Airport for my change of flights. And in LIGO, whenever we get a signal, we get this notification on the phone that something interesting has appeared. So I was at the airport and I look at all this ping, 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 ping messages comes on the phone. And so I connect on internet there to Zoom, remote, again, virtual research. And then all the research for my collaborators had joined and said, we think we've seen a star hitting a star. And that is an unusual sight because when a star hits a star, it creates gravitational waves like black holes do, but it also releases light. And within few days of that, every major telescope on the Earth followed it. It was almost like Avengers Infinity of astronomy. You had every telescope, everybody looking for it. And we were able to
Yes.
figure out how universe makes gold. So things like those, so black holes is actually formed from stars hitting, and it can be possible actually. It's just unlikely to happen to us Earth.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yes. So coming back to a couple of questions around aspiring students, Andrea uh, Vikas are asking similar questions. Andrea says, well, what would be your advice for bachelor degree students who want to become astronomers? Vikas is saying, how can somebody from a small town in Rajasthan, in a normal government college, from humble backgrounds, look to become a cosmologist? So, what would be your take on that?
Yeah. So it's I've had a fortune of meeting a lot of people who are from very different backgrounds. And
Yes.
for a long time in the path, they would have not thought they are going to be an astronomer. Actually, it's a very inspiring story if you read about the current director of the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton. Institute of Advanced Studies is where Einstein was there for the rest of his life once he moved to the United States. Still considered as the most prestigious places for doing physics. The director of that actually took, after he finished his BS in physics, he took a leave and did his fine arts. And after doing fine arts, he went back to doing PhD research. And he has always said that he's able to do physics better because he's now able to see it like an artist.
Hmm.
So the path to being a physicist, and especially maths and physics, I would separate it from biology because biology requires, and also just same way computer science requires you some sort of a training that you have to be with people, learn tools and do research. But in physics and math and things like cosmology, you have the liberty to take a complete backstab and just wander. And if you are wandering at the right places, I've seen students after finishing their mechanical engineering degree going to IUCA, Pune, which is the India's premier astronomy institute, getting out of there, joining PhD programs in the US, becoming very successful cosmologists, astronomers, astrophysicists. So you just have to be in lookout of the right opportunities wherever you are close to.
Right, right. Dr. Kanan, do you have a question?
I have a personal question to ask him, if I may. You
Sure.
look at
Yes.
the skies and the stars and you're so grounded. What is the secret of your humility? There is something about you which is so humble. Can you please share that with us?
True.
Uh, I think I have been very fortunate to see the people that I admire from too close, and their humility has removed any share that I would have. So, for example, I'll give you two cases. So I was at Stephen Hawking's Institute, and he was a research director there, and I was having lunch, and his staff came and politely asked, "Is it okay if Dr. Hawking joins you for lunch?" Now they don't have to do that, but the fact they would also ask a student that is it okay. And the other thing I've had such countless examples, but there is this one very nice example I learned when I was at Ayuka in Pune. And there is a person called Jayant Narlikar. If people know, he's this
Yes.
India's very famous cosmologist.
Yeah.
He's my childhood icon. I was at his institute again. And so Jayant and Stephen were actually college mates at Cambridge. They shared the same office. And Jayant is also extremely grounded. And the fact that I can call him Jayant is a testimony of how grounded he is. And so I can also call Kip Thorne by Kip, because all of them really push that fact that you should be able to call them by first name. So I was at that institute, and of course, Jayant Narlikar, iconic guy, everyone. And we had this lunch. There was a conference I was attending, and one of my American colleague came to India for the first time. He did not know who Jayant Narlikar was. So he casually asked, and Jayant was the same. Yes, he also asked, can I join on this table for lunch with you? And in my mind, it's like, you built this institute. You could tell us to leave this table and have the table by yourself. And this colleague then, as you ask in conferences, like, what research do you do? He just casually asked Professor Narlikar. And Professor Narlikar is like, oh, I work on this idea of the universe. Now, most of the people in physics have abandoned that idea. It's been past gone. We think Big Bang is the right way the universe is created. So this postdoc who was with me, who did not know, and he just ridiculed Jayant on his face. It's like, come on, who would work on this idea in 2000s? And Professor Narlikar still politely explained why he thinks his idea of universe still makes sense. And when you watch that scene and you're like, this is what makes science possible, is this humility. Across generations, people are able to communicate and push the ideas further.
Yep.
That's wonderful. I can clearly see that you're such a big epitome of success for people and somebody to emulate, somebody whose qualities people can emulate. This is a great opportunity. You're a Barodian and you're an MS University product. And for me, I'm a teacher in MS University. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. It's been privileged to have this talk.
Last question, Karan, from me. What would be your message to our students and our startups who've joined, and of course researchers and our faculty members? We have very nice crop and very nice mix of people who've joined us from various strata. What is your message to them? What is your final words?
So firstly, I've always been very proud of both Gujarat University, MS University. I've been proud of the university leaderships. Gujarat University, Rahul. I've been practically visiting both universities every visit that I'm there. One thing is I would say that for startups particularly is this has been an unusually nice times. In terms of opportunity, you have a clear field again where everything is broken. None of the traditional models are working. You have to think what can scale. And what can scale cannot be so simple that anyone else can also scale. It has to have that niche that only you can scale it. In case of Moderna, and I really want everyone to sort of read up this Tesla Moderna case, they have not tested a single thing on humans yet. But still, for years, they spent time to create this pipeline to make vaccines. And now they are valued more than any traditional pharmaceutical company is, because they made the pipeline possible that can scale now, and you need 7 billion humans needs vaccination. And imagine the impact that having a nice product that can scale can have. So really think about scaling.
Yes. Thank you, Karan. A lot of students are asking how to stay in touch. I'm sure your website, karanjani.com, has links to your social media. Is there anything you would like to add on being connected with you? And there are so many questions. I'm sure we'll do another thing when your time permits, maybe next month, and we'll talk a little more about your research, because there's been a plethora of questions on black holes and gravitational waves and LIGO, and I think we need to do a session on that front as well. But yes, how do students stay in touch with you?
I think Instagram is the fastest. If you find me on Instagram, that's the best way you'll catch my attention.
Perfect. So find Karan on Instagram, and that's where you'll get all your questions answered. And then of course we'll plan out another session as and when Karan's time permits. Thank you so much, Karan. This was enriching. This was exciting. Always a pleasure to talk to you on any topic, as you know. And yes, thank you. And I hope you're safe, and everybody around you, everybody you love is also safe. Please take care, and I hope to see you soon. And probably do a nice traditional lecture at somewhere in Gujarat, at GU, at MSU, wherever, and so that we could meet in more pleasanter circumstances.
Looking
Thank
forward.
you so much, Karan.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rahul.
Bye-bye.
Yes.